Welcome to the Reconcile podcast, where we're confronting cultural lies with hope, discernment, and biblical truth. Today, we have with us a special guest, John Noyes, who is a former atheist turned apologist with Stand to Reason. So thank you so much for being on here today with us, John.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if you will just start out with a little bit about who you are and what you do, but then also take us back through your incredible testimony of leaving atheism and believing in Jesus Christ as your Lord.
Yikes. Okay. I work for an organization called Stand to Reason. We're found at str.org. And what am I? I'm a Christian apologist and writer. I have my dream job, to be honest with you, Caitlin. It's pretty incredible. I've always, since becoming a Christian, wanted to work certainly in Christian apologetics, but then also specifically, really, I wanted to work with Stand to Reason. Yeah. And I'm also a pastor. So I founded a small little church, Soli Deo Gloria Church, in Southern California here in Ventura County. And before that, I pastored a fairly large church. I was the associate pastor, or I forget what my title was, but the number 2 pastor. At a fairly large church. And actually, it's at that church that I met Greg Kokel, now my now boss and mentor and founder of Stand to Reason. So that's kind of like how I got into what I'm doing. More than any of that, I have an amazing wife. Her name's Rihanna. She's incredible. We've been married, oh my gosh, it'll be 18 years this year. That's like a real marriage. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember when you met people who were married for I think, have you been married 10 years, did you say?
Not yet. We're going on.
Do you remember when you met people who have been like they tell you they've been married for 10 years and you're like, oh my gosh, 10 years. Well, now I've been married for almost 20 and I have 4 amazing daughters. I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, an almost 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And I love my girls. I'm a girl dad. So,
That's sweet.
So I live here in Southern California in the beautiful sunshine. I grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where I grew up in a home that was not at all religious or had any type of faith system. I don't want to say we didn't have a worldview, because everybody has a worldview, but my parents weren't intentional with teaching us any system of belief. It was more like a total, relativistic, you do you, figure out your own path, whatever makes you happy type existence. I didn't grow up with any Christians. I had absolutely no Christian friends. I mean, I had some Catholic friends, I think, but they weren't like they didn't take their Catholicism seriously. How about that? Right. They didn't go to mass regularly. They didn't go to church. They maybe went to CCD and got confirmed and things like this. But outside of that, they were the Easter and Christmas Catholics. Yeah. So I had no background in Christianity whatsoever. In fact, Easter for us was, bunnies, eggs, and candy, and Christmas was lights, presents, and Santa Claus, and no deeper significance, no deeper meaning at all. Yeah. And in the kind of the course of just growing up and leaning into the world and trying to figure out how the world is, I eventually just adopted atheism. As I say it like that, maybe I don't think we ever. Oh man, I don't know if I adopted. It's what I was taught. If I'm honest, right? And I think the kind of the default position, especially in our public schools, in science and these things, is atheism. And right. I was always a very scientifically minded. I like science. I like math. I like school, and so I was just bent towards atheism. And then after high school, I went to American University in Washington, D.C., where I majored in criminal justice. And it was really in college that my atheism really started to blossom and bloom. And I remember having amazing conversations I met some Christians, which was fantastic. And I would have great conversations with the Christians because when we say that I was an atheist, what I mean by that is I was pretty ardent in my atheism. I knew what I believed. I thought I knew why I believed it, and I wanted to defend that. And not only that, but I was evangelical. in my atheism. Like, I wanted everybody around me to be an atheist. And if I found out that you were a Christian, I would say, hey, Caitlin, like, we need to get coffee together because I need to tell you how stupid you are. The Christian worldview is completely ridiculous. I actually would have said, I remember saying this in classes in college towards the end, like senior year, where you sat to KLS, I remember telling, there was one kid in my class, Chris, and I remember telling him that if he goes on to get married and raise kids and does it in a Christian manner, I think that's child abuse and that the kids should be taken. Yeah. And so I was like that far extreme atheism, very aggressive. I'm a big guy. I'm passionate. So I would get in people's faces, run in. Like, I loved it. I love conflict. I still do. So I graduated college, and then I got a job. The dream was law school. I got a job at my first law firm, an amazing law firm in Washington, D.C. as a paralegal, and quickly realized I did not want to be a lawyer. And I was very happy with being a paralegal. So I was a paralegal at a firm, Jenner and Block. We did a lot of appellate work in front of the Supreme Court, and I had a really great career, short career there, less than 3 years, and then I moved to Los Angeles, California. Got another law firm job, and that's where things started to change for me. I met my now wife, Rihanna. I met her on my first night in Los Angeles. Wow. It was so cool. I flew from it was. It'll be 20 years this year, September of 2005. And my sister was living in the Valley, San Fernando Valley here. And she picked me up at the airport. And we didn't even go to her apartment. We didn't go anywhere. My bags were still in the back of her car. And we drove. She brought me to a party, and it's like at an apartment building in downtown Los Angeles, like right on the backside of downtown Los Angeles. And I had a little bit of a reputation because my sister had been talking me up. She'd be like, hey, my older brother's going to be moving to Los Angeles. You get to know him. He's really fun. And so I was standing on the balcony of this high-rise apartment building. And Caitlin, have you ever been to Los Angeles?
I have not, no.
Oh, we got to get you out here. Los Angeles is awesome. And okay, so it has a beautiful skyline. Los Angeles, I think, is really underrated for its skyline. In the evening, especially if you're on the backside. So the way it is like Los Angeles is on kind of like a flat land by the ocean, and then on the backside of it, mountains. And so if you're in those hills and in those there's some apartment buildings there, you get to see LA, and right beyond it, you see the ocean, and it's just idyllic. It's beautiful. And I remember standing out there on that balcony by myself. There were maybe 30 people inside, 20 people inside the apartment. And I remember kind of surveying my new kingdom. I was like, oh, I can't wait to tackle Los Angeles, the adventures that await. I mean, this is what, 20, I was 25, 24, so you're still, I was young and full of life. And I really wanted to take on this city with a new law firm in mind, new friends to make. And then I'm standing on this balcony, and then in the front door of the apartment walked the most amazing girl I've ever seen in my entire life. She's absolutely incredible. And right away, she got my attention, and I didn't even know who she was. And I remember turning around, and I saw her come in, and it was kind of the way that she carried herself. She was funny, and people clearly wanted to kind of say hi to her, so people knew her. She was kind of cool. But the way she carried herself it wasn't cocky, it wasn't conceited. It was confident. It was she just knew what she wanted, and she knew who she was, and that was very attractive to me. And so she walked in, and I had that reputation because my sister was talking about me, and she said, oh, my brother might move. And she walked in the front door of the apartment, and she walked as quick as her legs would carry her to come out to see me on the balcony to introduce herself, and she walked smack into the screen door. No. It was amazing. It was the most amazing thing. And she walked, dude, Caitlin, she walked so hard into it that she bounced off of it. Fell on her bottom. She fell right on her bottom. Man. And she put her hands back to brace herself, and I remember she flung her dark brown hair back and let out the most amazing laugh I've ever heard. My wife's laugh is infectious, and it's loud. And I love it because no matter where I am, if I want to make sure she's okay, all I need to do is listen for her laugh. Yeah. I'm okay, Rihanna's fine. I don't even need to keep an eye out or anything. It's just if she's laughing, I know we're good. And that night, I think I fell in love that night, if I'm honest. And she didn't feel the same way necessarily about me, but that's fine. Eventually, we started to date. And fairly early on in our relationship, let me see, that was September. So within the next, we started dating a couple months after that. Within the first maybe 2 or 3 months, our first Easter rolled around. And like I said before, my Easter was bunnies and eggs and candy and these things, Easter egg hunts. No significance. But more than that, like we at my family, me and my brother and my sister, me and my brother especially, we were really ardent atheists. My family still are atheists, at least my brother and sister. And we took every opportunity to make fun of Jesus that we could. And what better day to make fun of Jesus than Easter, right? Mm-hmm. It's supposed resurrection day where me and my brother would have said that that Christians believe in zombies. Mm-hmm. On this day, zombies were born. Ridiculous. And so anyways, my brother, he sent me an email on this Easter Sunday. And I remember reading it. I forget what it was, a picture of something. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was an email mocking Jesus, mocking the cross. And I remember laughing and thinking it was the best thing I've ever seen. So I had in my mind, I can't wait to show this to Rihanna when she comes picks me up. She was coming to meet me. We're going to go get brunch or whatever on Easter Sunday. And I used to live in Hollywood, and I was in it was a duplex, and I'm sitting on my stoop waiting for Rihanna to roll up. And when she does, I had in my mind, I'm going to show her this email. I'm going to show this picture. We're going to have this big laugh at the expense of Jesus, and it's going to be an amazing bonding moment. So I showed her this email, and instead of getting the laugh, I got her a complete shift in her countenance. I mean, it just dropped. Hmm. And then she said to me, "John, I've been meaning to tell you something." And I was like, "Uh-oh, what?" And she said, "John, I'm actually a Christian. And some of the things that you say just aren't appropriate and they're offensive." And I remember thinking, oh my God, this can't possibly be happening. Like, I cannot possibly date a Christian. Like, this was the worst news I could have possibly gotten. And then as we continued to kind of get to know each other, I every turn pressed into her. I would say things to her like, Rihanna, I thought that you were smart. Like, I thought you were an intelligent human being. Are you telling me that you believe in Adam and Eve? That's stupid. Nobody believes in Adam and Eve. That's anti-intellectual. Wait, are you saying that you don't believe in Darwinian evolution? Like, you don't believe in common ancestry? Everybody believes in common ancestry. That is anti-scientific. You are an idiot for believing these things and not believing certain things. And I would berate her for her faith. And if she were down here, she's upstairs right now doing I don't know what. But if I'm in my office in my garage, and then she's upstairs making sure the kids aren't jumping all over the place. If she were here, what she would tell you is she'd tell you that she left every date crying. And for two reasons, really. One is she knew the relationship couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't marry a non-Christian. And I knew this too, by the way. Like, I didn't want to marry a Christian. Like, I had no respect for Christianity or Christians in general. And then the second reason is I was borderline mean to her. The way that I would speak to her when it comes to issues of worldview, religion, faith, whatever, I was mean, and that didn't make her feel good. Well, then eventually Rihanna, she got brave, thank God. And she was courageous, and she actually asked if I'd want to go to church with her. And I have done crazier things for the affections of a woman than go to church. So I said yes. I had never been to church, ever. I had never, maybe once or twice to a Catholic church. I'm trying to, I don't think so. Maybe one other time. Well, I got saved in a charismatic church. So if you can imagine this just for a second, okay, so you're an atheist, Caitlin, right? So you do not believe in God. Not only are you an atheist, but you think the Christian worldview is completely ridiculous. Rihanna, she brings me to the church where I eventually get saved, and it's a charismatic church. So when you're rolling up, it's in Studio City, California. So they place a high worth on the arts. So music is blasting. It is so loud. And then you start listening, and you're like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, it's like a concert. And then you're like, wait, are they singing about blood and being washed in it? And dead people coming. What is going on? Like, this is so weird. And then, over in the corner, there's a woman spinning during worship, just in circles, doing her thing. And then there's over here, there's a group of people that are prophesying in tongues. I remember thinking, not only are you people wrong, but you're crazy. Like, you're absolutely nuts. But I stuck with it, and I kept going with her because Rihanna kept going. So I was like, hey, if you hang out with me Saturday, I'll go wherever you want on Sunday. I don't care. Like, who cares? And eventually Rihanna wanted to become a member of this church. And so she asked if I'd go to the membership classes with her. And I was like, this is fantastic, actually, because now what I was thinking in my mind is I want to see behind the curtain now. And now I'm going to like see the Christians in their like natural habitat. And I was thinking, I can't wait to figure out what you really believe so I can crush you. And so I went to the membership classes, and then Rihanna, she had to be interviewed to become a member of this church. So that's the last like kind of step in the process. So I went with her to this interview, and Rihanna has an incredible story, and she shared it. And then the pastor looked at me, and he was like, "So what brings you here, John?" And I said, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Pastor Dave. Let me tell you how dumb you are." And I spent the next 2 hours peppering him with questions of carbon dating and the age of the universe, questions of cosmology and biology, and questions of having to do with theology and issues with the Bible and all the contradictions. And I mean, I hammered him, and some of the questions he answered, not a ton did he answer to my satisfaction. He said, "I don't know a lot," and right. But he was honest, which is good. And at the end of the meeting, he stood up, and we all stood up, and he hugged Rihanna and offered her membership. And then Pastor Dave, after he hugged Rihanna and offered her membership, he took my hand in his, and he's shaking my hand, and he says to me, "John, we have enough members right now. Thanks for coming." Totally rejected. And I know it's some of the people watching right now, and this might be you if you're watching. You might think, how could he do that? Like, how could he reject you? You're a work in progress, right? Like, why can't he just welcome you into the fold and see what God does? And I get that. But with me, if he had said that to me, I would have had a major issue, because I would have thought that everything that I believed about Christianity was true. I would have thought that he just wants my butt in his seat. He just wants my buck in his coffin. He doesn't really care about truth or worldview issues. He just wants to profiteer off of me. And but he didn't. He rejected me, which is so great. But the best part and the key here is, as he was rejecting me, he'd shaking my hand, he turned me to his bookshelf. He had a bookshelf. The bookshelf was actually behind me, like it is in my video right now. And he turned me to the bookshelf, and he pulled a book off of the shelf, and he handed it to me. And he said, "John, I don't know if I've done a great job answering your questions tonight. I don't think I have. But I think you might find the beginnings to some of those answers to those questions in this book. Would you read it?" And I said, "Absolutely." And it was a book on Christian apologetics. I'd never heard of apologetics before. What happened is I started reading that book, and I realized that, a couple things. There were really good answers to some of the questions I didn't have answers to. Second, not only were there good answers to the Christian worldview to my questions, but actually the Christian worldview offered things that my naturalism couldn't offer. And that was a huge deal for me. So through Christian apologetics, I read that book, and then another, and then another. And at the same time, my future in-laws, they gave me a New Believer's Bible, NLT translation. It's like a study Bible. It's cornerstones of the faith. Who is Jesus? What is hell? What is sin? Like these things. And it was just really easy to understand. And I read the Bible cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation, over the course of 3 or 4 months. I used to ride the train to work every day, train home, read the entire time, at lunch, read, at dinner, read. And eventually what happened is the way I look at it is through Christian apologetics, God kind of softened my intellect. And then through the interaction with the Word of God, God softened my heart. And when those things came together, I realized not only was the Christian worldview true, but it was the best explanation for the world around me and my naturalism. So I was a naturalist. That's what an atheist, right? I believed that everything was the product of a purely physical process. I believed everything that exists is in the physical world. That's it. All we have is the physical. All we are is stuff. And it just became clear that atheism on a number of levels couldn't explain the world around me as well as Christianity could. And then I had I didn't have like a moment. I don't have like a spiritual birthday like that. I can't point to a date. Yeah. But I do remember certain instances where me like reading and really thinking and sitting back in my chair and being like, oh man, I actually think this Christianity stuff's true. And I remember there was a day where I told Rihanna that, and like she has a different perspective because she got to witness it from the outside. And she says that it was incredible because over the course of these 3 or 4 months, she saw just like, me growing in my understanding of Christianity, but also me growing towards God. And at one point I just said to her, she says that I like kind of just told her one day, yeah, I think this is all true. Like Christianity is true. And then, now I spent then from there, I went to graduate school almost immediately. I went to Biola for Christian apologetics, and I had no idea what apologetics was still really. So I Googled apologetics and I was like, oh, can I study this? Apologetics. And of course, like, typical Google best apologetics program, and one that popped up was at Biola. I'd never heard of Biola. I was like, oh, Biola, what's that? Oh, Bible Institute of Los Angeles. Oh, that's by me maybe. Oh my gosh, it's only a half hour from my house. So I applied. When I was in grad school, I was a baby Christian. So I was learning everything for the first time. So in Essential Christian Doctrine, I would ask questions, like they'd be teaching on the Trinity, and I'd be asking questions like, wait, Professor, I thought we believed in one God, not three. Father, Son, Spirit. What is this stuff? We have 3 gods? And everybody I remember like, I was like one of the oldest in the class, because I was like an adult. And most of these students were just fresh out of college. I remember them looking at me like, why is this guy here? Like, who let him in, And but actually Biola was a great place for me because a lot of the professors, it turned out, had pastoral experience. So they were very pastoral in how they taught. And then when we got to know each other, they really didn't just teach me, but they nurtured my soul at the same time, which is what I needed. So God has been very, very kind in that. And then graduated Biola. And right when I graduated, I was at the time working at one of the best law firms in the world, a little firm in Santa Monica. And my church that I was going to offered me a job once I graduated.
Okay.
And then I worked at the church.
Yeah. So, okay, I've got a couple questions on a couple of things.
It's interrupt me.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was enthralled by your story. That's so incredible to see just, the radical shift in you from just simply reading God's word and being exposed to that. And I think that's incredible. And it just shows truly how powerful it is. Now, I think some atheists or agnostic that I interact with, there's a lot of things that doesn't seem like they've really fully thought through, but you don't seem like you were one of those people. It seemed like you researched and you kind of dug in. And so I'm curious if there's anything that took you from, like you said earlier on in your life, of just not really being presented any other option. So it was just a default for you versus moving to that ardent kind of hostile atheism and that attitude towards Christianity. Was there something that you could point to that shifted that? I mean, did it happen in college or?
Something that turned me kind of into that militant kind of atheist guy. Yeah. I think I think it's the way God made me. Like, because I have always been an all-in kind of guy. Yeah. Like, so I'm just like all in everything I do. So, whether right or wrong. Yeah. Yeah. So, when I was all in on my atheism, I was all in. And I would read books and have conversations with people. And, I truly believed that I was right. I still do. I believe I'm right. just now I believe different things. So I'm actually militant. Probably isn't the best word to use, but I'm still I'm just as committed and passionate about my Christianity, as I ever was my atheism. Like when we go to Disneyland, my poor kids. I try really hard not to be like this, but I can't help it. Like I will roll up to Disneyland, we're back in the cab. My kids will like look at me and be like, "Okay, Daddy, can you please not talk about Jesus today?" like you're so weird. And I'm like, I can't do it, And I wear shirts like this is a bear, and he's got a Jesus Save shirt on the back. It's a bigger one. And it says "Bear Witness," So I just wear shirts that have tattoos that spark conversation, and I try. I'm not weird. I don't force it, but like I really love people. I've always really loved people. I love being around people, and if I'm around them, I want to talk to them, and I don't really just want to talk about empty things. I like talking about important things. Right. I like learning from people and asking them what they believe and why they believe it. So I think my disposition, like how I am, is something that was given to me by God. It's one of the ways I was created. Mm-hmm. But
I'm very similar to you. I grew up with my dad telling me I was definitely going to be an attorney. So, and then I had to learn, like I said, I before we started recording, I never denounced God, but I was always in whatever I believed. I was very passionate in that belief. And so that's never really changed, but thankfully I have the Holy Spirit now to kind of keep me in check of that balance, the balance of truth in love. And it's a hard one for me still sometimes because I'm like, this is the truth. And so here it is, So
it's so hard, but I don't know about you, but like, I love conflict. Like I'm one of those rare people that like, if there's conflict, I really want to move towards it and be in the middle of it.
I'm
not spilling it on.
Okay.
But offering resolution and like I don't ever shy away from conflict. When things get heated, I'm right there and I stay. It's really fun.
Yeah, I don't like necessarily seek it out, but I do, now that I was thinking about it, I was going to say no, but maybe sometimes I do. I tend to be the one that asks the tough questions that everybody's like, why did you have to bring that up? And then it kind of spurs on the conversation.
They always people always want to hear from you. They always want you around, but then when you're around, they're like, "Oh man, why did we bring her?
Yeah,
she's asking the hard questions, dude. This is my story of my life."
Yeah,
it's just
I feel that.
Oh, but I can't help it. Like I will literally go to elder meetings, or I'm on a board of directors for a bunch of different organizations. Like I'll go to the meeting and be like, "I'm just going to stay quiet." And then sure enough, 35 minutes in, I'm like I'm bringing this stuff up. And I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right. Like, how can you say like that's not right. That's not part of our mission. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah. Like, and that's, oh man.
My parents got me a sign one year for my birthday and it said, "I'm not bossy, I'm helpful." And so I think that sums it up pretty well. Okay, so a couple of questions from listeners. I posted last week and asked if they had questions for you. So I know you've mentioned some of this already, but you can tell me maybe a little bit more specifically. What was the most compelling evidence for Christianity to you? Was there something that stood out to you from these books that you just couldn't ignore?
Yeah. So the books helped point to something bigger. The reality. Reality is the way the world really is, right? So, and what I mean by that is it's fixed. Reality doesn't bend and contort according to your preferences or mine. Reality, the way I teach my kids is I tell them, reality is the way the world really is. And what happened is while I was learning all of this academic stuff and while I was reading the Bible, I started also, there's a few things. I started looking at the world around me and asking some of the big like holy cow questions, like where'd everything come from? Where'd the universe come from? And I very quickly realized that through these types of questions, naturalism didn't offer me what's called explanatory power or explanatory scope. Mm-hmm. I couldn't answer these questions on naturalism. I had to steal from another worldview, like what Frank Turek says, right? So that's, the beginning of the universe. Where did all the stuff come from? Because I couldn't answer that, because on naturalism, all I have, if we're just a random quantification of molecules, if we're just matter in motion, all we have is the matter.
Yeah.
We have nothing to start with, because where did it all come from? Because it's not complicated, right? Sometimes I feel like as Christian apologists, we make things too complicated. It's one of two things. It's either something caused everything, or nothing caused everything. And
at this point, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just curious, like at this point, do you know because I know now, even in biology and lots of, high level atheist thought leaders, there's been a shift, kind of a forced shift, because of realizing that there was an actual beginning to the universe. And so I don't know if that discovery had been made yet, or if you remember looking into that at all, and if that played into it.
Yeah. So Big Bang cosmology has, for 75 years, been the most accepted view of where the beginning of the universe. And what's really interesting about Big Bang cosmology, when we say Big Bang, a lot of Christians, we kind of recoil. No, not Big Bang, but we don't have, I think, a right understanding of what's being said. The Big Bang was discovered by, I think, a Franciscan monk or priest, and when the theory was beginning to gain prominence, the community that was rejecting Big Bang cosmology was the atheistic community. And the reason why is because what Big Bang cosmology says is that everything that exists was at one point centralized and localized into a singularity. And then it burst into existence. Everything came from nothing. And when we say everything, what we mean is time, space, matter, everything. And the reason why the naturalists rebelled against this or rejected the principle, the reason why they went to so many different lengths to try to come up with a different theory, like an oscillating universe, the universe is just growing and coming back, or multiverse now seems to be kind of taking on vogue, but there's no evidence for it, is because they're trying to avoid that singularity. Because they know if it came from somewhere, or something, right? We know nothing comes from nothing. Yeah. So you can't say everything came from nothing. It just doesn't work. And when I say nothing, I mean the philosophical nothing, not the nothing of like a Lawrence Krauss who's an atheist and he written the book Something from Nothing. And what he does is he says that everything kind of came from a quantum vacuum. Well, quantum vacuum's not nothing.
Right.
Right. So nothing is, Aristotle's attributed with saying this, but I don't think it was actually Aristotle who said it. He said, or it's quoted for Aristotle, nothing is that which rocks dream about.
Yeah.
Rocks don't dream because they're rocks.
Right.
But so what we're saying, if you want to say the universe, everything came from nothing, what you're saying is everything came from the dreams of rocks. And we all know that doesn't happen. Why? Like, again, it's not complicated. It's not controversial. Like, think about living in a world where something comes from nothing. Like, I mean, you could be driving down the road going 60 miles an hour and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a cow just pops into existence right in front of your cat. Yeah. Or just try doing science. Like, try doing science in a universe where things just pop into and out of existence out of nothing. Like, it would make life unlivable. So the questions that we need to be asking, again, let's just stay super simple. Like, it doesn't need to be complicated. The questions we need to be asking is, what system of thought, what worldview better explains the way the world really is? Well, it seems to me like we know intuitively what lines up with our basic intuitions about reality is that we don't get stuff from nothing.
Right.
So then we have to ask ourselves, well, okay, so if it came from something, okay, the universe, everything, what does that something look like? It has to have certain qualities that are true. And this is what was really difficult for me as an atheist, because I didn't want to say something because that something looks like something specific. It has to be outside of time and space. So it has to be outside of its own creation. It has to be immaterial. It has to be incredibly powerful, immensely creative. And before you know it, that something starts to look like something specific. It starts to look like someone. It starts to look like God.
Yeah.
So as an atheist, I really did not want to say God.
So you did have these questions, though, like towards your own worldview.
A huge one for me.
Yeah.
Because what kid doesn't sit underneath the stars and ask, where did it all come from?
Yeah.
What person doesn't look out at, at amazing mountains and just the created world around us? I mean, so the Bible says that creation screams God's existence, right? The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim his handiwork. Day by day, they pour forth speech. Night by night, they pour forth knowledge. So, I mean, when we look out at the created order around us, big and small, it screams God's existence, and God has built it into us to recognize this. Now, what we do with that is a different story, right? Until God saves us, until the Holy Spirit saves us, we're blinded to these things. God has given us over to the created order, right? That's what Paul says in Romans. But he's created it all around us so that we're without excuse.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows God exists at a fundamental level when they look at the world around us. And then part of the way that God has made us, and it's a beautiful thing about humanity, right? It's one of the things that separates us from the animals, is we're inquisitive. We like to discover things. And we all have that kind of, to varying degrees, I think we all have that kind of spirit within us. We're all adventurers to a certain level. I mean, my wife is not as much of an adventurer as I am, if I could go to Mars tomorrow, I'd go. My wife is like, no, I'm good here. But God has built us this way to discover his world. And as an atheist, I was like that. And I was asking these big questions. And what was failing me was my explanation, my answers on naturalism. And in this way, I think naturalism is just a limited worldview. It's funny because as an atheist, I used to say that Christians were closed-minded. They're a closed system. They don't avail themselves to the answers in the world. And then in hindsight, now it's actually the opposite. Naturalism, I think, is a closed worldview. It's closed-minded. It's narrow. Why? Yeah. Because all they have to explain the world around them is and everything in the world, not just where it all came from, but everything from the existence of moral values, which is another thing that I really wrestled with, the existence of the soul or consciousness, these things, right? Naturalism, all it has at its fingertips to answer these things is the natural world, the created, the stuff,
right?
Everything that exists is in the physical realm. But Christian.
So did that mean for you? Did you also? I know you mentioned naturalism a couple times. So would that put you in the same category as somebody that says we have no soul, so everything I'm doing is just a matter of? I think it's Frank Turek again that says like a moist robot that it's just stardust bumping into each other. And, was that something that you would fall 100%. In line with? Or? Okay.
So here's the deal, Caitlin. I was at this time, and this is just me, okay? And this is anecdotal to a certain point, but I think there's a larger point, a larger issue here. I was actually trying as a naturalist. I was really trying to live consistently with my worldview, especially towards the end. So as I was moving from Washington D.C. to Los Angeles, and I was, I guess in hindsight, I was going through I was wrestling with some existential questions, the real questions of life, questions of meaning, purpose, destiny, morality, things like that. And I remember, walking home from my law firm one night, and I got a call, and I remember picking it up, and the person on the other end of the line was sobbing. And I remember asking what's wrong? And she said these words. She said, Ronzo killed himself. It was a call telling me that a high school friend of mine had just been found dead by suicide. And my response, this is my response, and this is, like I said, it's anecdotal, this was my response, and it came out of my worldview. My response was, oh, well. I literally said, I guess Ronzo couldn't take the heat, so he got out the kitchen. Life goes on. Mm. Why? Because Ronzo is just a bunch of molecules. And his molecules, his matter, it's just now being rearranged. Now it's worm food. Yeah. Who cares? And it's not just me that thinks this way, by the way. If you read the Atheists, read them. Richard Dawkins, the universe that we observe has precisely the qualities that we should expect if there's at bottom no design, no purpose, no good, no bad, nothing but pitiless indifference. Thomas Hobbes in Leviathan, he says that life is solitary, poor, brutish, and nasty. Carl Sagan, in his Cosmos series, says that we are just made of star stuff. We're all made in the interiors of collapsing and dying stars, is what he says. Well, if we're just star stuff, if we're just matter in motion, if we're just a random quantification of molecules, how do you answer life's most important questions? Yeah. Why even ask them? Like, why are we asking? If at bottom life is just, there's nothing but pitiless indifference, why are we living lives that seem to have purpose? Like, why do we care about raising our children rightly? Or why do we want to take care of the homeless people or rid the world of slavery and racism? Or why do we care about the sex trafficking victims? Like none of that makes sense on a Christian, without a Christian worldview. And I was bumping into this facet of reality really, really in a number of ways, right? And it's kind of started with the idea of where did everything come from, and it morphed into the idea that if everything comes from somewhere or someone, then what's that say about who we are as people and how we treat each other in a moral depth? Because it became very clear to me as well that as you live in the world, we live lives. Again, this is not complicated. I mean, it's experiential. We live lives as if moral values and duties exist.
Yeah.
Like, you have trauma in your background. I don't know much about you, but you just shared briefly. Like, you have trauma, and the things that happened to you were wrong. Mm-hmm. But what do we mean when we say that was wrong? Like, yeah. Do we mean it was wrong for you? Or do we mean, no, it's wicked? Like, these things ought not happen to anybody. It outside of my personal preference or opinion. And I think it's the latter. I think that's what we mean. Like, this became a reality for me. I got to go to Auschwitz. Have you ever been to Auschwitz?
I haven't, but interesting that you would ask that question, because my grandmother is Jewish. They fled from Holland, her parents, and they were one of the last let into the United States into New York City. And my dad has done some digging, and most of our family did die in concentration camps. So
you should invest the time and the money to go visit Auschwitz. It'll change you.
Yeah, it
changed me, and I already believed in Christ. But it's like something about being confronted. So when I went, I traveled there. When I got there, I was in a tour group with a bunch of Irish young men, and they were like total stereotypical, like what I would picture Irish young men to be like, rambunctious. Maybe they were drunk. I couldn't tell. Like, loud, beating each other like mini Conor McGregors. All of them. And I've got all girls, so physical activity makes me really nervous inside. And these guys like wrestling with each other, beating each other up, and having fun.
Yeah.
The reason why I share this is because they're verbose. They were beating, like, they were just really active. But the second that we got to Auschwitz and we stood in front of those iron gates, their behavior completely changed. And nobody had to come to them and say, hey guys, can you calm down? Hey, be quiet. But you just knew. Like, we were standing among hundreds of people on a beautiful July day, not a cloud in the sky, 86 degrees or whatever out, and you could hear a pin drop. And nobody had to ask that to be quiet or anything. We just knew because we felt the weight.
Yeah.
And then you tour the concentration. One of the most powerful things about Auschwitz, and why I recommend Auschwitz, is because it's the only concentration camp that's still intact. The others were destroyed, they were burned, and then rebuilt, like as museums. But Auschwitz, you actually go into the places where these victims walked and lived and worked. And you're standing there, and you're standing in front of probably a 20-foot by 30-foot glass wall, and behind the glass are hundreds of prosthetic limbs that were taken from men and women who weren't allowed to live anymore because they were missing a limb. So they would confiscate their limb and then send them to the gas chamber.
Yeah.
That's wrong. Like what happened in the furnaces of Auschwitz was wrong. It was wicked. It ought not happen. But on atheism, on naturalism, I couldn't say that was wrong. I understand there's different types of naturalism. On the naturalism that I bought into, that we are all merely physical things. I had no room for this is the point, is what I'm like belaboring here, is this is the difference between objective moral values and duties versus subjective view of morals and duties, values and duties.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone that, identifies as an atheist or agnostic that would say that, no, I can have morals, I can believe in somehow we have this inner being where it's, one of the most common retorts I get to that is, well, it's for the human flourishing that we do this. But then you obviously have these clear examples where you have this whole society that, I know some of them probably didn't think it was right, but they chose maybe what was more convenient, and knowing that if they rejected becoming a Nazi soldier, that they would also be killed and their families. And so what would you say to someone that tries to take that approach to it?
Yeah, I would point them to two things. One, I would ask the question, why human flourishing? In answering in offering, the reason why we behave this way is for human flourishing. We're from the very start, where there's an assumption that human flourishing is good. So you haven't actually answered the question, why human flourishing? Why not cockroach flourishing? Yeah. Why is it human flourishing? Second, I would point them to, I'd stay in Nazi Germany and point them to the fact that this type of subjective morality is exactly what got us in the situation of Nazi Germany. For example, when the Nazi concentration camps were liberated by the Allied forces, right? And the architects of these places fled. And then there was a worldwide manhunt to find these people and bring them to justice. And they would bring them to the World Court in Nuremberg. And the defense, so there was a trial. The defense that the Nazi lawyers tried to bring up was, well, we were just doing what we were told. This was just cultural. This was so morality is, we come to morality, moral systems through a social contract, right? That's what a lot of people will say, a social contract. Well, the social contract of Nazi Germany was that this stuff was acceptable. And when the court heard this, their response was like, absolutely not. They actually said there's a law above the law, right? That's natural law. And that's what our laws here in the United States are founded on, right? That there's a law above the law. This is natural law, and it's objective. What you did in Nazi Germany was wrong, and you need to pay for your crimes. Well, if we're going to have this law above the law, we need a lawgiver.
Yeah.
Because laws have to come from somewhere, just like all the stuff. Like, where did everything come from? We have to ask these same types of questions. Like, well, where'd the law come from? And again, it's only two places. It's either from us, we either make the law, or God makes law, or it comes from an objective sense. You don't need to call it God. You can say something else, the universe, whatever you want to say, but it has to come from somewhere outside of ourselves.
Right.
In order for it to be objective. In order for things to be actually wrong in an ultimate sense, we need an objective law. And if we have an objective law, we need an objective lawgiver.
Yeah. And
anything outside of that system is just relativism.
Right.
It's
kind of wild too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Let me interrupt you again. It's kind of wild how, I watch a lot of debates online because I'm just fascinated with all of this, especially, Cliff Kenneckley and Frank Turek and things like that. But it is interesting how people have started to really kind of, like you said, living out the logical conclusions of their worldview and starting to say, I've heard people say, well, I guess then, yeah, rape is just wrong because I think it is, or the Holocaust was wrong just because we think it was. And that, man, I just have a hard time understanding how we get there. But I mean, it's in scripture, right? That their minds are darkened.
Yeah. Well, it's also, keep in mind, so this is what I like to do, especially with morality, because I think it's, these things, what we're talking about, they're fundamental features of the way the world really is. Like, this is how the world is, right? That means we experience it this way. And I don't think we don't base our truth on experience alone. But this is a good example of when we're talking about moral values and duties and moral depth to the world around us. Again, it doesn't need to be complicated. Watch how people live. Because people don't live as if morals are relative. They don't. Like, if I'm talking one time I was talking to my brother, my older brother, he's an atheist. And we are having this conversation about the existence of moral values. And me and my brother, we get really passionate and we yell at each other. That's our love language, is yelling. And so we're yelling at each other. This is outside my office when I was at the church. And my boss actually had to come out and tell us to be quiet. And what we were yelling at each other about was, he was saying that moral values are, it's social contract, right? We agree as a society what's right and wrong. We place ourselves under that social contract and live those things out. And then there's consequences for your actions and things like this. I said, no, Dan. Ultimately, that can't be, because that's exactly what happened in Nazi Germany. I'm pointing all this stuff out to him. And eventually my boss comes and yells at us and it's you need to be quiet. So I said, absolutely, boss, no problem. And I said to my brother, okay, Dan, you know what? We got to take a break. We're producing more heat than light. Let me use this break in our conversation as an opportunity to, this is what I said to him, invite you to a really cool getaway that I have a men's getaway every year. What I do is I rent a cabin on Lake Arrowhead. That's a lake here in Southern California. It's absolutely beautiful. And I told him, Dan, you know what? It's great guys. It's great food. And now my brother, it's important to understand, he's an atheist. He's a vegan, which is terrible. I'm sorry if you're a vegan, but it's just
I'm not a vegan.
Oh no. My goodness. I don't know which one's worse, is atheism or veganism. He's a really good guy. My brother I look up to in a lot of ways. He's a really good man. He's a good dad. He's a good husband. He loves people. He's dedicated most of his career to helping inner city families. He ran a nonprofit for over a decade that was, really made an impact in inner city Boston. And I look up to him in a lot of ways. He's an environmentalist that flows out of his veganism, and he tries to live consistently with it. These are things that are important to understand what I say to him. So he doesn't wear things that are leather. He doesn't buy things with animal byproduct. He really does his research and tries to live according to his ethic, which is great. Good guy, atheist, vegan, environmentalist. So I tell him, hey, Dan, come on out. Come stay with us. It'll be really fun. Good conversation. Not everybody's Christian. You don't need to be a Christian to come. I'll scrub the grill off so you can grill your barley or whatever it is that you're gonna eat that's unseasoned and gross, I'm sure. But and then he's like, wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I said, well, I haven't gotten to the best part yet. I said, the best part of the whole trip, the best part of the whole weekend is what we do is on the last day, we rent a boat and we go out on the lake. And we take a 50-gallon drum of sulfuric acid with us. And what we do is we dump the acid into the lake and see how many fish it kills. But before we do that, we take a bet on how many fish it's going to kill. And the person who gets closest to the number wins all the money. And by the time I'm done explaining this to my brother, he's got veins sticking out of him. His face is beet red. And he says to me, John, you can't do that. And I said, well, Dan, I can do that. I can rent a house on Lake Arrowhead. I can rent a boat. And I'm really good friends with the chair of the chemistry department at Pepperdine University. I could probably procure myself some acid if I have enough money and really wanted to. I said, Dan, what you mean by that is I ought not do that. And I said to him, Dan, you need to tell me where you're getting that oughtness from. Because on your view, ought is simply cultural consensus. In the consensus of my immediate culture, it's fine for me to go poison a lake. You don't have that on this. And I said to him something to the effect, you're stealing from my world, like a Frank Turk thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was really cool because at that moment, he's honest. My brother's honest too. I mean, he stepped back and he looked off to the side and then he was just like, you know what, John, I think you've given me something to think about here, which is my goal. Like, fantastic, Dan, like, think about it, and he's not a Christian and he probably still defends, I haven't had a conversation with him in a while about it, but he probably still defends social contract theory and things like that. But the point is, when we seek to live life out, again, it comes back to the fact that the world is a certain way. It doesn't change according to our likes and dislikes, our preferences. And nowhere is that seen more than in the existence of a moral depth to reality. My brother knew that there was an oughtness there. Next time somebody is defending this, like they say these things to you, it's just because of the evolution of our species or human flourishing. Next time they do that, next time somebody has their phone, okay, and they put it down, what you should do is you should grab their phone, you should pick it up, you should put it in your pocket, you should walk away, drive away. And then what's going to happen? They're going to take somebody else's phone, they're going to call their number, you pick it up, and they say, hey, where you go on my phone? You say, what? Where you took my phone? No, that's not your phone. This is my phone now. You see, you have the newest version of the iPhone, and it's going to aid in my flourishing because I'm better able to communicate with my kids. So this is my phone now. This is according to my moral systems. And people right away, they know, we recognize that this stuff's not, that this isn't the way the world is.
Yeah.
And that's, so these are the things that I was wrestling with as an atheist, like, and I couldn't explain the existence of a moral depth, for example, an objective moral depth to the world. I would object to things being wrong all the time. But what was I doing? And also keep in mind, like, so problem of evil stuff, this was a huge issue for me too. Like I was the first one to bring up the problem of evil. Because I think it's one of the most powerful arguments against the existence of God. It has been forever. Yeah. But one is you ask the question, well, what are we saying when we say something is evil? We're saying that something has to actually be wrong. And we just kind of talked about that. But also look what happens when, like, one of the things about the problem of evil, why I love it so much now is I think it's one of the best proofs for the existence. It's one of the arguments for the existence of God. Because evil is something that's real, something that we all experience. That's why it's so powerful. It's three premises followed by a conclusion, normally the argument, right? So if God is all good, he'd want to eliminate evil. If God is all powerful, he should be able to eliminate evil. Evil exists, that's the third premise. Therefore, the conclusion, God most likely doesn't exist, or at least not the Christian God. Nobody argues with the third premise that evil exists. Yeah. We all know evil exists, unless you're, like you subscribe to one of these Eastern religions that gets rid of, and then you have other problems. But look what happens when you're an atheist and you're bringing up the problem of evil. Notice you still have that third premise, evil exists. You still have the problem. So atheists, they have to answer the problem just as much as Christians do. Yeah. So you still have evil in the world that you have to explain. So as an atheist, what I realized at a certain point is when I brought up the problem of evil to get rid of the existence of God, I wasn't actually solving the problem. I still had the problem. All I was doing was getting rid of one of the possible solutions. All I was doing was getting rid of the only possible solution to the problem of evil. And then through my interaction with the Word of God, reading the story of God, I started to realize the entire book is about the problem of evil. like it's introduced in the third chapter and it's resolved 66 books later. The entire Bible is about the problem of evil. And not only that, but as I started reading in a moral context, but even more than just a moral context, but as I'm reading scriptures, I saw that the Bible actually it explains how the world is. Right. Like the Bible seems to represent, like, if it's true, exactly how the world is. it's the true story of reality, you know? So these are just some of the things.
So you mentioned suicide already as a part of this friend that you had from high school. And so I know I've seen some videos of you talking about this issue and the prevalence of it right now in our culture. So what research have you done? Is it on the rise? And what do you think personally is behind this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wow. So suicide has been the number one talk I've given in the last 5 years, and it's like 30. Actually, now it's probably more than 30% of the time I'm speaking somewhere, wherever it is in the world. I'm speaking on suicide, at least suicide. Sometimes I'll speak on multiple topics, but suicide is almost always requested. Yeah, and the reason why has nothing to do with me or really my talk. It just has to do with how prevalent it is. Suicide is definitely on the rise. Rates of suicide have been climbing for the last 30 years. And is that
global or is that specific to the United States?
So most of my numbers that I know are going to be according to the CDC. So it's going to be to the United States. However, I know globally it's on the rise. Like you look at, you start like, so suicide is the second leading cause of death for people aged 10 to 34 in the United States. Wow. Second leading cause of death. The first is accidental death. A lot of those not a lot, but many of those accidental deaths are misattributed suicides. Drug overdose, intentional car accidents that are just labeled a car accident, gunshot wounds even, and oftentimes deaths that are questionable are mislabeled. I don't want to say intentionally, but suicide has such a stigma that if somebody's able to label it accidental death, oftentimes on a death certificate, they're going to label it accidental instead of suicide because of shame, guilt, whatever it might be. So suicide is everywhere. The problem with it is that, and yes, it's on the rise. I mean, since in the last 20 years, we've seen a 30% rise. It gets worse when you start looking at subsets of the demographic. Girls, females, the female population. Some studies are saying that in 2021, 60% of high school females in this country experienced deep anxiety, depression, and suicide ideation. That number should shock us. It should cause us all of us to stop and say, what is going on? 60%, 2/3 of the population and of our females are wrestling with this. It used to be about a decade ago, about 12 to 13% of American college-age students contemplate suicide. When I say contemplate suicide, I mean had a plan, when, where, and how. Not just a fleeting moment. Oh, I wonder if people would notice if I'm dead. Yeah. They actually have a plan. 12 to 13%. Some studies coming out of COVID, not all studies, some studies coming out of COVID are suggesting now that number has risen to 25.5% of American college-age students contemplate suicide every year. 1 in 4.
Wow.
What's going on? Well, a few things. When you start looking at the literature, like why do people contemplate suicide? That's the question. The literature, like in the science, they list a ton of things, right? Depression, anxiety, mental health, certainly financial situations, loneliness, isolation, loss of relationships, autonomy. All of these things are listed. But I think the answer to that question, why do people contemplate suicide, ultimately finds its beginning in a lie that people believe. And that lie is that somehow they'd be better off dead than alive. Whatever it is that they're going through, the best answer in the moment that they're in is going to be their death. Yeah. And that's a lie. Well, why do people believe the lie? And I think it has to do with hope. I think our culture is anemic when it comes to hope. I think that we live in a culture that we don't have objective hope. It's being stripped from us. Because I think our culture has been influenced by actually naturalism. You see, John Stonestreet, he's great. He's a friend of mine. He's fantastic. And he says this, he says, ideas have consequences. Bad ideas have victims. And I think we're seeing a lot of victims to a very bad idea. And as I survey the culture and I see the influences of the Judeo-Christian worldview kind of waning, lessening in our culture, and I see naturalism kind of being propped up as kind of our default. It has been for a generation. That there's effects, there's consequences to this belief system, and nowhere more, I think, is that found in where we derive hope from in our culture.
Yeah.
Our culture, I think people want to find hope in themselves because we're just a random quantification of molecules, right? So human effort, where do we derive hope from? Well, we gotta work harder. You pursue education, money, fame, sex, influence on social media, all of these things. And not these things aren't all bad, by the way. I'm not saying that they're bad. But when we place our identity and look to these things for hope, they fail us. Why? Because we constantly fail as human beings.
Yeah.
You don't live a perfect life. Every single relationship, when we place our identity, it's big to place our identity in relationships. Every relationship that we have is going to be broken by sin or death at some point. It's only that relationship that we have with the Redeemer God that can't be broken.
Yeah. So
when we scrub our culture of that relationship with God, all we have left is the temporal. All we have left is ourselves. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, I talk about that. Anybody listening would know this is a part of my story, and it, to me, when you said relationship, that just, that hit it right on the nail on the head there. So I like to describe it as addiction in human form, because I wasn't addicted to substances, although I used them to try to numb everything. But looking back over my story, I can see that my identity was always in these other things. It was in sports when I was younger, and then it went into, how good can I do, or can I be the best at this, and then my relationships, and, eventually, like you said, every relationship, we're all human beings, so we're all going to fall short. They're going to disappoint you eventually, believe it or not. That beginning phase of the relationship doesn't last, and there has to be something else there. And, all of my hope was in that relationship and the success of that relationship. And so when it failed, it was like I failed. And that, and then after a certain point, I just felt like no one's going to love me, and I'm not enough for someone, and that's why nobody ever stays. And so it just got to the point where thinking about going on was just too painful. And it was like, what's the point? I don't want to do this anymore. And although for me, I grew up with a Christian background, so I was afraid of God to do it. I wasn't sure how that was going to play out for me if I did that. And I thought of my parents, but I just couldn't overcome. It's very short-sighted, and especially for young people, I feel like I'm not trying to lessen your problems that you're walking through, but like I told you before we started, if you had told me that I would be where I am now, where I have joy, I have peace, which all of that comes from the Lord, and nothing in the world, I did all the things, I did all of the things that the world says is supposed to make you happy and feel great. They didn't work. They made me miserable. And so that all comes from the Lord. But, I tried all of that and it just didn't work. And so I just felt like this was my only option. So, yeah.
It's a permanent solution to temporary problems, right?
Yeah. And
you just said, what you just said is so good. All of it, you turn inwardly and we fail ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
And you're not, but I love that you said, and you're not trying to belittle people's problems.
Yeah. Because
people have problems and they're real. And that's and I hear that, and I see so much brokenness out there in the world, and especially among a lot of the times I'm in front of high school and college students giving my suicide stuff, and I'm not belittling people's problems. I mean, there are real trials. And by the way, just because we're Christians doesn't mean we don't have problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something Definitely. I see within the Christian community. that somehow, for some reason, we feel like as Christians that life should be perfect and we should be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But we worship a suffering servant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why would we expect our lives to be perfect? I love, so in Ephesians 5, Paul says this. He says, be careful how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, because the days are evil.
Mm-hmm.
And he's reminding us that we need to live circumspectly, cautiously, vigilantly as Christians, knowing full well that the world is broken. It's evil. There's evilness in the world. And Jesus pays attention to this. That he says Satan is a liar. He's been a liar from the beginning. There is no truth in him. So he says, Satan came to kill, steal, and destroy. I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly. Right. So there's this idea that Satan is alive and active. Peter says that the devil is prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Yeah. And as Christians, we need to be aware of this stuff.
And I think you reminded me of, I kind of lost my train of thought. And so I didn't quite tie a bow on what I was saying when I said, about it being short-sighted, but not trying to lessen someone's problems, is that I had real problems. I had real trauma. Had been through, just when I sometimes it's normal to me because I lived it and I kind of suppressed it for a while. But when I tell people and I see their faces, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, this was, it was a little crazy at times. And so, it's like I had real problems that I couldn't see past because, like you said, my hope was in material things around me. But when you have the supernatural hope that supersedes anything of this world, that I know no matter what this life brings, that I'm going to be in heaven someday, that Jesus is going to make all of this right. That is what gets me through, because like you said, I still have problems now. Not all my problems were solved through, coming to Christ. So, but that is what gets me through, is that eternal hope that supersedes all of our earthly temporary circumstances. And I just want to encourage anyone listening that has walked through suicidal tendencies that God may not solve it all the way you want him to, but I can tell you without a doubt that my life today is full of joy and peace. And before that, it was full of misery.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I love what you're saying here, because even in our trials, in deep dysfunction, deep hurt, there's hope, right? So Paul he says that tribulation produces perseverance proven character, proven character, and a hope that does not disappoint. I love that. One of my favorite verses is, and I can't remember the address off the top of my mind. It's somewhere in 2 Corinthians, but for these but momentary light afflictions, producing in me an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison.
Yeah.
Paul's saying two things here, right? These but momentary light afflictions. Paul knew what suffering was. Paul knew what suffering was more than most of us, I think, will ever know suffering. Just read about Paul's, abandonment. He was flogged. He was shipwrecked. He was, tortured, right? And in it all, he says that these afflictions, these pains, these trials, these tribulations, they're momentary. And what he's doing is he's placing them on a divine timeline, right? It's not just the here and now. We have glory to await. That's that hope that he was referring to. So when we view our circumstances in light of heaven, in light of glory, new creation, they pale in comparison.
Yeah.
He points us through our trials because we know that the trials, no matter how grievous, on the other side of glory, are but a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Right. Because why? And then notice the second thing that Paul's saying there is that not only are the trials momentary, but our trials, even the traumatic stuff that you've been through, they produce something in us that otherwise wouldn't be there. And I think we lose sight of this. I think while suffering is a result of the fall, I feel like sometimes as Christians, we feel like suffering is like a mistake. And I'm not saying God causes all suffering or he wanted these horrible things to happen to you, Caitlin, or horrible things happen to me. He doesn't want horrible things to happen to us. He loves us as his children. But he takes those horrible things and he uses them to build us, you and me, into the people that he wants us to be. And ultimately, he wants us to be rulers and reigners with King Jesus in glory.
Yeah.
And I think we lose sight of that it's through the afflictions, through the suffering, that God grows us and prepares us to rule and reign with King Jesus. You see, glory is weighty. It's going to be a job to rule in heaven, and without going through trials, tribulations, whatever it might be, I don't think we'll be prepared. I think God uses them, and I know he does. So Joseph, right? So Joseph, the guy with the fancy coat in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Joseph had a horrible life for the most part. Abandoned, thrown in a ditch by his brothers for dead, sold into slavery, and not a good existence. Raised up to power, but then Potiphar's wife lied about having an affair with him. Back down to the dungeon he went, raised back up to power, and then in it all, after everything is all said and done, he plays a little game with his brothers there. Later chapters in Genesis, I think it's Genesis 54, somewhere in there. And Joseph, at the end of it all, he's standing in front of his brothers, and he says, because they finally figure out who he is, and they say sorry, and he says, what man has caused for evil, God has used for good. And then why? He says, so that an entire people group might be saved, right? So God used the suffering in Joseph's life, which was immense suffering, not trivial, more than I'll ever go through. I know that.
Yeah.
But God used it to build in him the character that he needed to have in order to raise him up to leadership, to ultimately save Israel through famine. And I think God uses the suffering in our own lives. And this is the main point of the suicide stuff is we got to press on. We press on through our trials, through our loss, through our suffering. And when we do that, we see that God, he builds us up. He lifts us up. He feeds us. He clothes us. He loves on us, and he heals us to some degree. I'm not saying you're going to be perfectly healed this side of glory, but one day you will be perfectly healed.
Yeah.
When we look to that promise of glory, I press on toward the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus, is what Paul says. Mm-hmm. So we constantly press on towards that call, that prize.
Yeah.
And I mean, Scripture deals with all of this stuff. And, when we start talking about this and suicide in general, I mean, there's example of people who die by suicide in the Bible. Saul and his armor bearer, Ahithophel, Zimri, Judas Iscariot is the most famous one that we all know probably. But then there's also people that we lose sight of this as people in the Bible who got to that same point due to trials and loss, guilt, shame, whatever it might be, that they too wanted to die, but they said no. And I mean, Elijah, the prophet of God, after he confronted the false prophets of Baal up on Mount Carmel in, I think, 2 Kings 18, rains fire down from the sky, huge victory. The very next chapter, he's running from Jezebel. It says that he went a day's journey, found himself under a juniper tree, wishing that he would die. Lord, take my life, is what he says. Trials, loss, whatever it might be. He's in this circumstance he doesn't think he can get out of. He just wants to die.
Yeah.
Jonah prayed that he would die. Solomon, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And this is at the very end of his life when he writes Ecclesiastes. He's saying life is meaningless. He goes on to say that life is like striving after the wind. Yeah. Just meaningless events.
Right. Yeah, well, and this kind of ties into one of the other questions I really wanted to get to, which is on Christian nationalism. So I'm not sure if you're ever called a Christian nationalist. I feel like most of the people I talk to are basically just because they use their worldview, to talk about and educate on different topics. But so let me try to tie this all in, because as I've done this podcast, and this is not me wanting to tear down the church. This is genuine genuinely out of a place of, I think that there are some things we could do better as the American church. And one of them is transparency on some of these really difficult topics that it seems to me that, obviously there are churches that do talk about it, but in my life, I have heard just recently, a sermon where suicide was talked about, but I've actually never heard the word abortion inside church. I've never had training on how to share the gospel. I've never had training on how do I handle someone that identifies as transgender. And, I know we can't be and do all things, but it seems like these are huge topics that our culture is facing, and a lot of them are life and death issues. And so I saw you had a video. I don't think maybe you have social media, but I've seen some videos of you talking. And one thing you said is, and by the way, I don't self-identify as a Christian nationalist because the terminology and the definition changes a lot. But I have been working through theonomy. I don't know. Are you familiar with that word?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just basically how I describe it is, advocating for God's moral law in the public space. And, I have a hard time seeing what any alternative could be to that for Christians. And so, but then I'm kind of hit with this, well, you're a Christian nationalist. You want to force Christianity on people in your worldview. And, I wonder if that has really played a much bigger role than we know in suppressing the Christian voice in America towards these things that are wicked or evil or that need to be addressed, or that the body of Christ itself is actually confused on. And so in this video, you were talking about calling governing authorities into repentance to Jesus. And so when I was researching an episode I did on Christian nationalism, I thought, wow, I've never really thought about it in this way, like the supremacy of Christ, that right now he's seated at the hand of the Father. He is reigning over everything, all nations, not obviously in the way that we see later on in Revelation, but he's reigning now. He is supreme now. And you're still called, at least how I'm seeing it, but let me know if you have a different thought on this. Regardless of if you accept Jesus in this life or you don't, you are called to submit to him, and you have the choice not to, obviously, but then in the end, you receive punishment. So I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, what do you think about Christian nationalism or theonomy? And then why do you think churches are avoiding these topics, and should they be doing that? Because I know that is a big question.
Yeah. So, Christian nationalism, I'd have to ask, like, you hinted at this, like the definition, you can ask 100 people what Christian nationalism, you get 100 different responses.
Yeah.
If you mean by Christian nationalism, I am in favor of my worldview, my Christian worldview, to influence governmental policies and laws, of course I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants their worldview to influence the policies and laws.
But what's so interesting is that I've talked to so many people, even at my local church in the Bible Belt, okay? That's where we're at. I have talked to so many people that go to church with me, and it seems like, based on some Barna research studies and things like that, that there is honestly a disconnect among Christians on this topic of, especially, I talk about abortion a lot. And so a lot of Christians will say, yes, I'm pro-life. I know what the Bible says about that. It's clear on that. But then they will, in the same breath, say that people should have the choice. And so what do you think creates that disconnect there?
Well, I'm not sure that they've I wonder if they've thought through the issue. When you say, what I would do is, if I'm in a conversation with somebody and say that, I would ask them, why are they against abortion? Why are you against abortion? And if they say anything to the effect of, because it's the taking of innocent human life, then my next question would be, so when is it appropriate, do you think, to take the life of an innocent human being?
Yeah.
And is it just a matter of, like, when I think, when I am in economic hardship, or when when I'm scared, or none of these things, like whatever the reason is that somebody wants to justify abortion. I think it's the Christian who says that they're pro-life. The Christian who says that they're pro-life and then says they don't think that that people should still have a choice means that they're not pro-life. They're pro-choice.
Yeah.
Like by definition. So I would have no problem asking them, like, how is your position pro-life?
Yeah.
Like, you're against abortion. Like, how exactly are you against abortion and why?
Yeah. And the common response is that, well, Jesus wouldn't want us forcing our beliefs on people. So I know I'm getting you into hot waters here, but I'm just curious.
I don't mind being in hot water. But I don't understand. Of course, Jesus wants us to propagate and further the Christian worldview. Go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded. If Jesus were here right now, and he is, by the way, in you and me, would Jesus advocate for the most vulnerable in our society? This is almost unfathomable. Like, see, this is where I get passionate about this. I'm a huge advocate for pro-life stuff, anti-abortion. Yeah. And so Luke 18, right? So in Luke 18, when the little ones are coming to Jesus, and his disciples like shooing them away, Jesus offers them an incredible rebuke. Incredible rebuke. It'd be worse for you to have a millstone tied around your neck. That's what it says about the little children. Jesus is pro-child every step of the imagination. I mean, in every step of the way. I love it when people tell me, like, well, the Bible doesn't say anything about when life begins. Of course it does. Of course it does. Jesus, when he meets John the Baptist for the first time, Jesus, we have first trimester Jesus meeting second trimester John, and they interact with each other. Yeah. And of course this is life in the womb. So I think a Christian who says this, I would challenge them in a very polite way, as polite as I can, to reconsider their position. I just had this conversation. So I was just in Washington, D.C. I went onto the National Mall during the hands-off protest. I was there for filming. And what I was doing, I was just going up to people, asking them about their signs. I was talking to a husband and a father and a son. And we got to the pro-life issue. Was this from the defund Planned Parenthood? How they were just defunded, or? There were 20,000 people there, so everybody had a different cause. Okay. I went there specifically because it was supposed to be like the women's march, is what I thought it was. But when I got there, it was like everything. I mean, everybody in their grandmother. Okay. And everybody had a sign, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. And I'm talking to this father and son, and we get talking on the abortion issue, and they said that they're Christian. And so I hold them to Christian ethics and values. Human life matters. Why? Because we're made in the image of God. Yeah. So when is it okay? My question is when is it okay to cause violence to the image of God? Never. And then so how can you justify like a position where you're saying, well, who am I? Well, who are you? You're an image bearer. You're a Christian. Yeah. If not you, who? That's what I say. If not you, who? And and just because we advocate for a position, I'm not forcing this whole thing, forcing your morals on somebody. I mean, this is the political process. The political process is inherently moral. Right. Almost every law that I can think of in my mind right now is moral in nature to some regard. Even deep down, tax law is based in moral law. I mean, this is what we do. You don't legislate morality. That's all we legislate. Yeah. Yeah. And so for the Christian, to want to keep our Christian identity and our Christian worldview out of the political sphere is a travesty. And all of this, like Caitlin, keep in mind, I do not have a home politically. Mm. I do not find myself comfortable in either of our two major political systems, like the political parties right now. And that's just me being honest.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about Trump not being consistent. I believe TDS is alive and well, and I'm not a diehard MAGA. I support him no matter what. But when I post a video about life, and then I'm not talking about Trump at all, and then people come in the comments and, well, if you support Trump, you're not a real Christian. I'm like, okay. You guys don't get it clearly, because I don't support him blindly. I've talked about the fact that he's not consistent, and that it breaks my heart, but I pray that he will be, and that he'll, follow the convictions.
This is where I think, like, your original question about Christian nationalism really comes into play, because I think Christian nationalism, as widely defined by the culture around us, and just the world that we live in right now. I mean, if we Christians, when we get outside of our Christian bubbles, what we find is, I think that the culture around us is mostly not Christian.
Yeah.
So most of the people around us, when you ask them what is Christian nationalism, you'll get some idea of Christians forcing themselves into the political sphere, making the country Christian.
Yeah. And
that's not what I think Christian nationalism is. But I will say that this I understand the view is okay. My family, like last time not this last election, the election before, when Donald Trump was in the presidency, my family just assumed that I was a Donald Trump supporter. Yeah. I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for anybody, because that's where I landed. So I remember having this conversation with my family, and they're like, well, your guy is doing this. And I'm like, whoa, like, why are you assuming that this is my guy? Like, there's this assumption. And I think that that's largely because I think that there's some truth to what is out. Like, I think that there's some truth to this misunderstanding what Christian nationalism is. But just because there's been this kind of, there's been a conflation. You and I might not agree on this, and I feel bad if I.
That's okay. It's okay.
I think that there's been a conflation between Christianity and republicanism.
Yeah. No, I would 100% agree with that.
And I think that's problematic.
Yeah.
For any number of reasons. Listen, I'm a Christian. Mm-hmm. How do I vote? You want to know how I vote? I vote according to my Christian morals. And anybody who says otherwise, I think is anyone who votes otherwise, who's a Christian, I think is mistaken. I think we always want to vote according to our Christian morals and values. Yeah. Because those Christian morals and values are given to us by God.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and I have some inclinations or leanings towards theonomy. Like I think that Jesus is ruling and reigning. I think that the scriptures are clear that the government is on his shoulders. I think that Paul in Romans was very, very clear about the role of the government. And the government is a tool being used by God. And what's the responsibility of the government? The government's responsibility, according to Paul, is to reward good and punish evil. And when the government is faltering in either one of those things, I think it's the responsibility of the Christian to call the government to repentance. Yeah. If not the Christian, who? Yeah. I mean, like, what do we want? Do we want the other belief systems to do it? Because we're operating, or at least we should be operating, out of the Christian worldview, which is the true worldview. I think a lot of the things that like when you kind of were mentioning the people that you talk to in this disconnect about relating issues, cultural issues, political issues in the church, and like kind of dealing with these in the context of the churches, I feel like what happens is what's happened is a lot of Christians, we believe that there's neutrality out there.
Yeah.
Like somehow there's this neutral ground, and that's a myth. There is no neutrality. Mm-hmm. Christ says that it's either me or not. And it's that simple. And I think that we, unfortunately, try to operate according to these neutral systems, meeting people where they're at, and they just don't exist. And in the process, we sacrifice our Christian ideals. Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, you've really like threw me through a loop with this question. This is great. Well, it's just really interesting because like we have this idea, and I think it's maybe because we've bought into cultural lies that somehow the Christian worldview, if lived out appropriately, is going to cause some people harm. And that's just not the truth. Right. The truth is when cultures operate according to biblical principles, they actually thrive. Not just the Christians within the culture, by the way. Yeah. When they operate according to biblical principles, all people thrive. Mm-hmm. I mean, the world is largely literate because of the Christian worldview. Because we train up missionaries to send them out into the far corners of the world. Why? To teach them and read their Bibles. Yeah. Major educational institutions in our country, all of them are founded on Christian principles. Right. And, I always find it interesting when, like, okay, they want to say, well, what are you really doing for children? Or you don't care about the immigrant. And it's actually like, no, Christians do more for all of those people groups than any other group of people. We adopt and foster the most children. We take care of the most immigrants. It's just interesting how they can be so zealous about it and not see that Christianity is actually the thing that makes us not just say we care about people, but actually live that out in Christians, give the most charitable giving. And, I totally understand that there are genuine Christians that disagreed on Donald Trump and who they were voting for and everything. And like I said, I just want to make it clear, like, I don't agree with, if you're Christian, you're Republican. No, absolutely not. You have to follow your convictions. You have to follow biblical morality. And, I did vote for him because I felt like that was the best chance of our country turning around, and that there were some things that he would do that would be good. And, sometimes I've been disappointed, and I pray for him, for his heart to continue to change, that he truly does know the Lord. And I prayed the same thing for Joe Biden, and so I know that there are genuine Christians and that we've disagreed on how to handle that. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. And because I think we just need to be able to have conversation again. Even just having a conversation where we can disagree seems like it's really difficult in our society. But that's problematic. Like when the opportunity or the willingness to converse breaks down, is really where everybody suffers. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think a lot of this has to do with the current moment that we find our in with social media and we live in a hashtag culture, and we live in a culture where I feel like we're not willing or we're not able to think through issues. We're willing to say something and just throw it out there, but we're not actually able to explain why we believe what we believe. We're just like we're an inch deep and a mile wide. Yeah. And in the process, we're just argumentative. And we're also, I feel like the culture in general is extremely reactionary. And we see this through the news cycle, where it just doesn't even matter, like, if it's true or not. We're just throwing the headlines out there. And, we'll clean it up later. I just recently watched, there was a girl that was a U.S. citizen, and she was arrested for murder in, like, Italy. This is years and years and years ago, decades ago.
Oh, yeah. I used to watch true crime, and I remember the story. I'm not going to remember her name, but I remember the story. Her name. Yeah.
But I just recently on Netflix, I watched the documentary about this case, and there was a reporter that they interviewed throughout. He was like the main reporter that was breaking the story for the U.S. media. I think he was American, maybe British. I can't remember. And he, at the end, like his last line of the film is like, did we rush to the headlines? Yeah, but he literally said something to the effect like, "What, did you want me to like wait for all the facts to come in before I publish the story?" And I'm just like, yes, you know. But I feel like that's us too, as the public too. Instead of giving people the benefit of the doubt, we rush in. Social media. I don't do social media much.
Yeah.
This
I
is
don't
one
blame
of the
you.
reasons.
My life would be better without it. 100%.
Yeah, because it's just like, well, I'm also like, I have an addictive personality. So, I mean, when I do scroll, I doom scroll, dude. Like, it's like 2 hours can go away like that. And I'm like, you know, what have I been doing on YouTube for the, like, like I've just watched 26 consecutive shorts on Casio watches.
Right.
What have I done?
You know, I had said before, like, I'm friendly with like theonomy, and I kind of am. But like where I get off of I don't know, have you read Rushdoony or Bonson or
So I listen to Jeff Durbin a lot. Okay. And so that's kind of what got me here probably. And I know he talks about Bonson. I have not personally read any of his stuff. And I have questions, like genuine questions about theonomy. Like, okay, well, which moral laws, are we going to enforce the Sabbath? So I have questions, but my questions against it are far less than, they don't outweigh what I see in favor of theonomy, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, it does. It makes sense. There's a great guy, if you want to read him. His name's Joe Boot. I think he's out of Canada now. He's I think level. I like Durbin too. Durbin's great, especially on pro-life stuff.
Yeah.
Durbin is fantastic. I love his stuff. But like Bonson was fantastic. Bonson has a debate on YouTube. It's just the audio, not video, but where he debates Gordon Stein.
Yeah.
Have you ever listened to it?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness, you should really listen to it.
Okay.
Because I think Bonson does a really great way. It's more instead of theonomy, it's more just his presuppositional apologetics comes.
Yeah.
And like these guys, all of these guys, I really, really like and respect a lot. I just think sometimes we take it too far. I would say that like a lot of the laws, for example, I think God's moral law summed up in the like the 10 Commandments are still applicable today, but like the civil and ceremonial laws were written to a people group, a specific people group at a specific time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, I think that we as Christians are for sure, and I understand the rub because I think these guys are doing a good job of actually engaging the culture, which I think we as Christians have kind of stepped back, and that's part of the problem.
That's a great segue into just brief. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
And just briefly, I would love for you, because I know you've done street ministry, street evangelizing, debating even, some might call it. I know Christians can be very opposed to that word, but I mean, Paul stood in the synagogues and debated, right? So it has its place and it can be helpful. Give me a case for that to the church, because it does seem like to me that it's still very stigmatized. And I know that there have been people that do it wrong, but honestly, my own husband has been feeling very led and called to do this, and he's had trouble because it would seem that a lot of even Christians really tend to look down on this, and that, well, you shouldn't be out there doing this. So I just want to hear your thoughts on it, and why do you do what you do out there?
These last like 3 questions have been really good.
I know.
They're really, really good questions. Okay. First, not everybody needs to be like me.
Yeah.
Thank God not everybody's like me. Because the world would not be, it would not be a better world. God has gifted us all differently. and he uses our gifts differently, and praise God for the diversity that we see around us. I think if you're going to make a biblical case for evangelism in general, but you're asking specifically to go out like kind of on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, Matthew 28, which we just quoted, is the Great Commission. So this is the commandment that Jesus gave before he left.
Mm-hmm.
That we go out into the world and make disciples. And how are we going to do that if we don't talk about who Jesus is?
Yeah.
If I trail off here, cut me off.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it is because I'm passionate about people. I love people. And the reason why I love people is because they're made in God's image, and God has fashioned them special and unique. Even the most ardent atheists, even the people who hate Christians, God has made them in his image. And I combine that because they're made in God's image, they're of infinite value, worth, and dignity. And they're worthy of my time and my respect. I respect all people. I do not respect all ideas. So because I have this understanding, this I think proper and right anthropology, I also built into my anthropology, I have this understanding of man's lostness, and maybe it's because of where I come from.
Yeah.
Having been lost, having been wayward from God for so long, and the brokenness, and then receiving receiving what comes with knowing who Christ is, and now experiencing the world as we ought to experience it with Jesus and redeemed. I just have a passion for people, and I think they're incredible, and they're incredibly lost, broken, and
I mean, it seems to me that we've kind of, at least in the church in America, have kind of settled into a hope that the lost come here to church rather than going out where they are.
Huge
and,
problem.
I see the apostles and the beginning of the church. What were they doing? They were in the public spaces proclaiming the gospel.
100%. And, I mean, this is nailed in the go portion, right? And disciples took Jesus at his word, and so should we. It's so interesting. Oh man, I'm going to get myself in trouble. Whatever. I just feel like the church we've been lulled to sleep in the West. We've become very comfortable in the West, and what happens is we become very consumeristic in church.
Yeah.
Where what we do is oftentimes, I feel like a lot of people, what they do is they go and they give their tithe, and they expect their pastors to do,
right,
as if it's a service.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this from experience because I've pastored in both contexts, the large church and a very small church. And I know what that's like when you try to get people to go out even in my small church, if I try to go get people to come out on the street with me. So my daughter, Eva, my oldest, is very engaged with the pro-life stuff. Like, I love her innocence. She just looks at the abortion issue and she just doesn't get how somebody could have an abortion. She just doesn't get it. And I love that.
Yeah.
So we go out to abortion, we go to Planned Parenthood, and we go out front and pray and do street evangelism and talk on the sidewalks to people together. And when I mentioned to do this to my church, I have a church of like 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
They look at me like, you're insane. Well, why is that? Well, I think I think our church has become, I think our churches are asleep. I think that we haven't had to do the hard work of evangelism in the West. And like you said, we've kind of conflated it with like foreign missions, that stuff has to happen out there. We need to send people to China. Well, I think I just read somewhere that I think in the next 10 years, they're expecting more Christians to be in China than in the United States, mainly because of population.
Yeah.
But
I also make Christian shirts to go along with the podcast. And if that way, if people want to support me, that's how they can do it. And I made a shirt about Barna Research saying that only 4% of Americans have a biblical worldview. So I know technically maybe they're not unreached, although there are a lot of unreached here. I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. But they're they're not saved, so it's like, I kind of feel this burden of like, well, why are we not sending people out here?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, again, I think we've probably, and maybe we're doing a little bit here in this, we're kind of causing a bifurcation, a separation where we shouldn't. Evangelism isn't this like separate component of faith. It's part of the same thing. It's right. Like the faith is a holistic thing. The Christian worldview is a holistic thing. And I think when we view things in these, we compartmentalize our Christian worldview, and I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's actually probably secular. I think that like we view Christianity in a full orbed picture, and part of this orb, like a part of the full orb, is going out and bringing not just evangelism, but just bringing our Christian ideas out into the public sphere. The psalmist, oh man, I'm going to mess this up. The psalmist, he says, declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous works among all the people. Right. So, and I don't know where it's like in the 90s somewhere. But this is what the psalmist is telling us to do. We're told that the only way that people are going to come to believe is through hearing the word preached. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God is what Paul says in Romans. And so these things that we need to do, we're the hope of nations. The Christian worldview we're told in Matthew, right? The gospel is the kingdom, and the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached to the whole world, is what Matthew 24.
Yeah. And that's always what I say to people when, and I try to do it respectfully, but like we've talked about, I'm also passionate, so it can come across as aggressive. I don't mean to be, but it's like, how did we get here? It's like, it's like they think, like you said, it's this separate thing over here.
If you have people, okay, so if you're listening right now and you're wanting to get engaged and you don't know how, and you're like, this is a topic that's wrong with this, I challenge your listeners, like, this is what I do. And this changed me. I pray. I pray a lot. But in the morning specifically, this is what I say. Normally, most mornings, my house is like going off. Like I'm just trying to survive the first 20 minutes. Yeah. So I pray really quickly. I say, Lord God, thank you for the day that you've made special and unique. Something to this effect. Lord God, thank you for the day that you've made special and unique according to your will. Perfect. Thank you for saving me above it all. Thank you for using me in building your kingdom. And this is key. This is what I say. I say, Lord God, today, would you allow me to see people as you see them? Would you allow me to see people as you see them? Because God loves people. And I think if we were to develop a genuine love for people, I think our evangelistic efforts would become easier. You asked the question, like, why don't people evangelize more? And know what? Here's the answer. Like, you can edit this, and this is the answer right here. And I think it has to do with one of two reasons. The first is, I think that people put too much responsibility on themselves. I think a lot of the times when we, if I were to say to your audience or whoever, hey, we're going to go out and evangelize in the streets of Los Angeles, a lot of people would be very fearful. And the reason why is because they feel like if they don't somehow save that person, or they don't get to the gospel even, they've failed. Yeah. And that's just not the case. We need to take that weight off of us, right? It's Jesus who does the saving. We're just his ambassadors, right? 2 Corinthians 5:20. We are ambassadors for Christ, begging on behalf of Christ to be reconciled to God. Because what Jesus has done for us, we are now availing ourselves to be used by him to introduce other people to Christ. And that's all we have to do, is we don't have to save people. So get that weight off of ourselves. I think what's happened is so in the Gospel of John, I think it's Gospel of John, Jesus, he's looking to the fields, right? And they're white for the harvest. This is what Jesus says, they're white for the harvest. And then he goes on he categorizes people in two groups, right? There's harvesters and there's gardeners. Harvesters and gardeners. And I think a lot of the times we think that we have to be harvesters, like we have to fill our basket full of ripe fruit. or else we've failed.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times we should be gardeners. We should be tilling soil, planting seeds, watering it, seeds of the gospel in people's lives. Like if you survey your life and your story of going from not knowing Jesus to knowing Jesus, most of us have a story that entails a fair amount of time of somebody or a group of people sowing into our lives. And then we become ripe for the harvest. So what I'm saying is that there's two different groups of people, but we're one team. And that's Jesus's point in this story is that there's one team and he says, so that we can rejoice together. So we can all rejoice when when a new believer falls into the basket, so to speak. But I think a lot of us are just gardeners. And we need to do what we're just called to do is just garden, just have conversations with people. Now, that's one reason we bear too much weight. The second reason why I think people are scared and don't want to go out is because we're not prepared. We don't have a game plan.
Yeah.
So we go out into the streets or the idea of going out in the streets is super scary to us because we don't know what we're going to do. What if somebody asks a question that we don't know? What if somebody says something that we don't? What if we say something that makes us look stupid? Even worse, what if we say something that makes Jesus look stupid? We don't want to do that. So what we need in order to get prepared is we need to train. Yeah. And that's what we need to be doing in our churches. Actually, that's what we do at Stand to Reason a lot is we train believers. Like we equip believers to take these ideas out to the world around us. And one of the ways that we do that is we learn tactics and there's certain tactics that we can just learn and practice and get familiar with so that when we go out into the world around us, we don't feel this pressure of too much weight on us, but then we also know how to respond to people, even when we don't know the answers. So I think that's why people aren't evangelizing. I think they're nervous. And I think they're nervous because they bear too much responsibility and they also don't have a game plan. And so if we were able to place right understanding, knowing that the salvation is not up, we can't resurrect anything. God does. And we own that. Sure. And we say, God, you're going to do your work and I'm just have to do mine, which is just a little bit of gardening. Yeah. And then we also, if we spend time becoming equipped and prepared, learning tactics on how to do some of this stuff, it gets less scary and then we're able to do it. And one last thing, just like I want your listeners to understand, like, I go out on the street and I love talking about Jesus to people, but it doesn't like always come naturally. Like I think when we watch like Jeff Durbin or Ray Comfort or Cliff, I can't pronounce his last name.
Yeah, Connectly. I don't know. I could be getting that really wrong.
They're amazing. There's a few things going on here. One, you're not seeing the unedited footage. Yeah. Two, which I don't even know if there is. Like some of them are long form, and Jeff Durbin certainly he does a great job. Two, keep in mind that these guys, Cliff, he's been doing this for 30 years. Yeah. You know what I mean? Ray Comfort, same. Jeff Durbin, at least 15. You know, and when you go out there the first time, guess what? You're gonna fail. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. You know, it's okay. It just matters on how we take our failures. When I go out on the street, guys, when I stand in front of a Planned Parenthood or when I go down to the National Mall, I have conversations that fall flat. And that's okay. You know, because I mean, I'm concerned. I have an audience of one. I'm concerned about what Jesus thinks of me. And as long as I'm I think pleasing Jesus, I'm good. And I don't have to be sophisticated and buttoned up. I just have to put myself out there. And the more you put yourself out there, the better you're going to get. And then read books like Tactics by my boss, Greg Kokel, right? Learn something called the Columbo tactic, asking simple questions just to guide and steer a conversation. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to defend anything if you're asking questions. Right. And then just get up there.
I think too. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something else? Okay. I think too, like for us, we really have a desire, especially, you know, maybe going in front of Planned Parenthood or going to, let's say, Pride events or whatever. Obviously, because of my background there, I have an affinity to want to speak to those people and into their lives. But, you know, something I was feeling is like, well, I don't really feel like supported because I think that a lot of us are lacking like true discipleship. And so instead of just sitting around and complaining about that, we decided, okay, we're going to try to start this at our church, like be a voice for this at our church and actively seek people out. And I will say that I've been praying for that for a couple of years now. And literally just last week, I met another couple that has extensive experience in this and is ready to like jump in, link arms with us, go out with us, teach us what they know. And I think that that is invaluable. Like, you don't have to do it alone. There are people that have experience and have the heart for that can walk alongside you if you will just pray and maybe seek that out. But yeah, it's just, it comes from a place of not trying to condemn anyone, but just that I really want the church to be operating. I don't want to know necessarily what the letter to the American church would be right now. So I'm trying to, compel people forward.
This goes back. I'm just going to throw this out there. It goes back to your, like, our view of government too. Like, what we lose sight of is also God uses the governments of the world to judge the nations as well. And this is not a popular view by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe the reason why we have a government that does the things that it does is maybe because our nation's under judgment. And
trust me, most of my views are very unpopular. So it's you're in a good place.
What that means is that means we need modern day prophet to go out and speak the will of God and be the voice of God. I'm not saying like we don't hear from God like Elijah did, but like we certainly should be contending for the Christian worldview out in the marketplace of ideas. So
okay. Well, thank you, John, so much. This has been a great conversation. I know we have covered a lot. You're probably exhausted.
It's great.
I just love your story. And I know that people are going to find this helpful in just how to maybe even deal with friends and family that they have and how to talk to them and how to love them. Just tell us where anyone can find you and support you if you have anything new you're working on or coming out soon.
Yeah, sure. So I everything of mine is going to be at str.org, Stand to Reason. Okay. If you guys have local churches or whatever that you want to hear this stuff, I'd love to come speak with you guys. And you can just get in touch with us through, I should know that. I think it's info@str.org.
Okay. I'm sure people can find it on the site.
Somewhere on there. And then, so everything I do is pretty much there.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, easy peasy. Okay. Well, thank you so much, John. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
My pleasure. Thanks.